Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna and I'm so glad that you're here. Today we're talking about the Tombow Citrus palette. And at first glance, yep, that looks like citrus. And so I think they overall did a good job in terms of those bright, punchy, citrusy colors that you think of when you hear citrus. So you get the oranges, you get the yellows, you get those lime greens, and you also get a few other colors thrown in. Let's go ahead and get into the swatches and demo so that you can decide for yourself whether this is a palette that you want to spend your hard-earned money on and how you can best use it in your own art journey. So be sure to leave in the comment box below, how would you use these markers? Are you gonna get them? What would you use them for? I love to see that stuff because it gives me ideas too. So be sure to like this video and subscribe and stay a while, and I will see you guys in the swatches and demo portion of the video. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned earlier, this is the Citrus palette by Tombow, and it is a 10 marker palette with all 10 markers being individual unique colors. No blender is included in this palette. One thing to be aware of with this palette is that these are all quite bright colors except for the browns in the palette and border on neon. They're so bright. So these are very happy, very bright colors, and then you have those few browns thrown in at the end to provide a little bit of contrast, as you'll see. The first shade is number 055 Processed Yellow, and it is a true yellow tone. Next, we have Chartreuse, which is a bright yellow green that really leans heavily into that yellow, but does dip its toes into the green. Then we have Willow Green, number 173, and here you're moving further into that green and further away from the yellow. And this next one is Sap Green, number 245. This is a true green color and does provide nice contrast to those yellows and greens that we have seen so far. Next, we have Rhodamine Red, number 725, and this is a very cool blue-based red that is really kind of like a hot pink. It's very pretty, and it provides a nice, cool dose of color with those warm tones we've seen so far. Next, we have Warm Red and number 885, and this is a red that has a lot of orange in it, so it is quite warm. It does match its name. It's nice and bright and happy and makes me think of lollipops and watermelon. Next, we have Scarlet and number 925, and this is an orange. You've seen this one maybe perhaps in some other palettes, and I'm not sure why they call it Scarlet, but it is definitely an orange color that has a good amount of red in it compared to the next shade, Orange, number 933. This orange leans more towards the traditional orange rather than the red-based Scarlet. Next, we have Burnt Sienna in number 947, and this is the darkest tone we have in the entire palette. And it is a nice mid-tone shade, it bordering on dark. So it is a nice addition to the palette and provides a nice contrast, especially if you are drawing citrusy things with stems and trunks. The last shade is Saddle Brown in number 977, and this is a light brown shade that does work well with the palette, but I'll get into a bit more of the review and overall palette cohesiveness later on in the video. So here's the rapid fire look of the palette as a whole. You can see that you do get those nice tropical punchy colors thrown in here that do make you definitely think of citrus and summertime. The only thing I wish they would have done is swap out one of these browns and put in a black, and I think this palette would have been perfect. It gives you those nice lemony colors, limes, grass greens, dragon fruit and watermelon tones and oranges and all of those things that you think of with summer and citrus fruit. And I think that the brown is a good addition and definitely necessary in this palette. However, I do think they missed the mark by having two browns in here rather than taking that opportunity to put in a different color that would have really complemented this palette better and added more depth and contrast throughout. So now you can see that I'm just playing around and using these markers to create some silly little fun illustrations, and it's really fun palette to use. One thing you will notice is that I did pull in a few extra supplies just to really help those illustrations be cohesive and come together. So I used a Pigma Micron to add black to my illustrations and my lettering, and I also used a little bit of white from a jelly roll to add some highlights. I'll let you guys relax and watch how things come together and how the markers work with each other and come to your own conclusions, and I'll meet you at the end for the review. Now, my only criticism of this palette is, again, contrast. And while they definitely did give us some contrast, and for that I am thankful, I thought that it was kind of a weird segue into contrast. So, for example, when I think of citrus, I think of these bright tropical neon colors, which they definitely give you, but I don't think brown. Now, I do think the brown was a good idea from Tombow, because once you actually start to work with these colors, brown works. But that being said, they gave you 2 browns and there's no black at all, which is what I'd actually think of as a really good, strong pairing to provide that great contrast in this palette. So if you look at the palette as a whole, you'll see that they gave you 2 browns and then a lot of these citrusy colors. So I felt like, okay, here's your lemons and limes, here's your watermelon colors, your oranges.
Those make sense, but with lemons and limes, you get those little like dark specks, and to me, they don't come across as brown. And with watermelon, you have black seeds. So it just didn't make sense for there to be two browns and no black in this palette, in my personal opinion. So you'll see that as I create the illustration, the little fun doodles and stuff, I had to pull in a black because I just couldn't get it to pop enough without that black. So you see that I created some of those little specks, some of the watermelon seeds, and an outline on my letters with that black in order to really make those colors pop and stand out from each other, because these neons tend to kind of blend into each other because they're so bright and they're in that same color value family. So while the brown is great for creating, you know, this kind of stuff, like the trunk of a palm tree, and I do think that the brown was a good choice, I would have just recommended that they take out one of those browns and add in a black so that you really have an entire citrus inspired palette. That's my opinion. Definitely do make a decision based on how you use your markers. So be sure to like this video and subscribe and stay a while, and I will see you guys
Next time. Bye.